Good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Alex Wilson. I'm the CEO and President of Precious Timber, Madeiras Futuro, and I welcome you onto tonight's call. Thank you for taking the time and sharing a little bit of your evening with us tonight. The subject matter, one in which that I've been following and spending quite a bit of time on the last 6 months, researching, analyzing, dissecting, is how to build family wealth that will last for 100 years or more. In fact, the building of the wealth we won't spend a whole lot of time on. One thing that I think most of us on the call tonight understand is the most popular way in the U.S. to create wealth is generally through your own business. Obviously, there are some very wealthy people. Warren Buffett comes to mind that have made their fortune from the investment world and in the investment world. But most average individuals, most average families, and we're talking about family wealth tonight, have created their wealth through a business venture, through a family business. So for the most part, we'll be talking about how to protect that wealth, grow that wealth, and pass that wealth on generationally to each new family as the family expands and continues to grow. So the focus tonight is basically how to protect it, how to pass it on, how to make it grow. Tonight I'll be referring and reading from a couple of books, some excerpts from a couple of books, but referring to Family Fortunes by Bill and Will Bonner, and also to a book that I've used several times in the past. If you've heard any of my presentations and webinars, it's one of the best investment books of the last decade, in my opinion. Bob Rice's The Alternative Answer, the non-traditional investments that have driven the world's best performing portfolios. Now, of course, there's a lot of wealthy people across the world, and on your screen there's a small sampling of them. Pamela Anderson, for example, was once very, very wealthy and went from great wealth to basically bankruptcy. Burt Reynolds, the actor, for example, has had ups and downs with his money problems. Billy Joel has filed bankruptcy 3 times. I think we all know the story of Mike Tyson, and many tens, if not $100 million or more, in the heavyweight boxing world, and his rise and fall were pretty spectacular. And then, of course, there's the lovely Judy Garland, who passed away, unfortunately, flat broke. So what happened? What was it that these people didn't do that the wealthy families are doing, have been doing, to cause the wealth to stay in the families? Well, there's 2 main things, and I'm going to cover more than these 2 tonight, but there are 2 things in my study that I found that wealthy families kind of embrace. They embrace real, tangible, hard assets, especially those like real estate, like farmland, but in particular, hard assets that create a perpetual, constant, steady flow of income. And we'll discuss these things in detail. But there are 3 in particular differences that I want to focus on tonight. 3 that in my research seem to stand out. Number 1, wealthy families that successfully hold their wealth and pass it on, design and follow a family creed, a culture if you want, a set of beliefs or aims that guide the family's actions. Second thing they do is they have an investment focus which is on loss avoidance. In other words, safety. They embrace long-term wealth creation over what the average investor, the average family focuses on short-term profit speculation. And then finally, we'll cover tonight the building of hard and soft structures. We'll just touch on that a little bit. I'm talking about estate planning structures, legal tax deferral, legal tax avoidance structures, and family processes and protocols that the family embraces together, the family lives by, and the family passes on. One of the things that I also was kind of surprised and amazed at is that most of the ultra-wealthy families are not using financial advisors. They're really in control themselves. They take a lead role in their portfolio and their wealth and manage it primarily themselves. When they need help, obviously they do go outside. But for the most part, they are constantly on top of and in charge of and very much involved in the management of the wealth. Now, before I move on, I'd like to just talk a little bit about a kind of phenomenon, if you will, especially over the last decade or so, with certain investment groups. I'm going to particularly pick on Yale University and their endowment, which over the past couple of decades has had tremendous success, and especially over the recent extraordinary decade where it's doubled, and it seems to be doubling every decade. How is it that they can double their portfolio so successfully? Do they have any special skills that we're not familiar with at picking the right stocks? Actually, when you discover this, and it's inside the book, the great read, as I mentioned before, The Alternative Answer by Bob Rice. He starts the book out by actually stating that Yale University is not a particularly good stock picker, and the reason for that is in 2012, they only had 6% of their portfolio even in U.S. equities. So most of their holdings are not in the stock market. They're actually in other places, and particularly in the alternative investment category. Same for Harvard, same for Princeton, and same for the two wealthy families in the picture. One in the center is the Cargill family. They focus on what they know, and that's agriculture. And also the family on the right, one of the wealthiest families in Switzerland today. So what they all have in common is that they love real tangible assets, not paper assets. They love tangible assets that generate consistent cash flow and consistently appreciate in value. So let's look at these three points that we're focusing on tonight. Number one is the family creed, the family culture, that set of beliefs or aims that guide the family actions. Now, most families let things happen the way things happen. And I'm turning now to Bill Bonner and Will Bonner's book, Family Fortunes, and it says here, most people do what most people do. They build a family randomly. They go off to school, they meet someone, they end up living somewhere, then the family life starts, they end up in a career, the children go to the local schools, they might attend a local church, they become entrenched in the local mass culture, they get caught up in social pressure to do the same things that everyone else is doing. And the same can be true of the conventional rich, for example. They go Republican, they stay in the mold, they buy the right house, the right car, they attend certain social events, they give to the right charities. They even compete with other rich families and other rich people to look successful. And their wealth grows, and as their wealth grows, so does their consumption. So that later in life, these more affluent families, they become more wealth consumers than they do wealth producers. Now, serious old money, wealthy families with serious old money, they do things very differently. They create their own culture, in fact. They're relatively independent. They plan their lives purposely. And their time horizon, way different, much longer than those of normal families. They think in terms of 20, 50, 100, sometimes even 200 years. They like to leverage the natural cycles of life, using the talents and of each of the family members. For example, the young and old, they like to build the family business and the family wealth together. In the youth, they have energy, and maybe that energy is valuable at producing wealth. But old age, the older members of the family have the wisdom, and they have the essential know-how how to hold on to wealth. The young people in these families are sources of energy, enthusiasm, sometimes new ideas, but the older members of the family, that's where the sources of experience come from. Now, of course, most families don't do this. Most families, in fact, that have money lose money. 70% of first-generation wealth is evaporated when the second generation take over, and 90% of first-generation wealth is gone by the third generation. So what's the disconnect? There's something that's not connecting correctly, that only 10% of the super wealth, or any wealth for that matter, remains in the family from the third generation on and perpetually on thereafter. Well, typically, modern families spend most of what they make. They live for today. They're focused on the short term. A lot of people here in the state that I live in, they brag about being members of the ski club, and that's the Spend Your Kids Inheritance Club, or the NFL club, the No Funds Left club. They focused on their kids for a short period, which was getting them through the higher educational stages of their life into college and then on from college. But then after that, you're on your own, kids. We have our life to live, and we've been focusing on building our retirement nest egg, and we're going to enjoy it. So that's what most people do. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not having an opinion. I'm just saying most families spend what they make. The modern family is focused on short-term things. For example, parents earn a decent income. They might save, as I say, for their own retirement, and the rest is spent. This short-term focus drains their financial resources, even if they earn quite a considerable income. That's part of the reason the savings rates in the United States, for example, are so low, just 3.5%. Each generation focuses on its own needs and its own wants. Now, in my particular state, I believe, at least from those that I know, and I'm not going to call these people friends, they're acquaintances, they're fixated on the largest house, the largest square footage, the shiniest, most high-end brand named vehicles, watches, jewelry. They certainly like to go shopping. Black Friday, the lines are, even before the stores open, 24 hours before the stores are open here, people are lined up to go shopping. So really not conducive to passing on the wealth and fostering a philosophy or a creed or a culture in the family that intensifies and amplifies the importance of generational wealth. To do that, it takes teamwork. It takes two to make it work. It takes two to tango, if you will. It takes two to dance. This dance that you have to dance to be able to create this perpetual wealth philosophy that passes through generation after generation. Now, of course, when I say it takes two different steps, two different people, but we must dance together. Both the patriarch and the matriarch have different steps that they'll take, but they have to be working together. Certainly, it takes an extraordinary effort to produce the wealth, but it also takes an extraordinary effort to hold on to it. Most family money is very unusual to hold on to it. It takes time, effort, it takes a lot of hard work, sacrifice. The energy that people put in doing this is generally sacrificed, inside the house. What I mean by that is more often than not, and it's not always the case, of course, but more often than not, the husband is the one that's focusing on the money. Obviously, there's a lot of very successful and talented women, but most often the wife focuses on the family, and all of the sacrifices that he makes, obviously, come at an expense. But likewise, she too will have to make an exceptional effort and an exceptional sacrifice to do something extraordinary. And that's why I say it's part of what the patriarch does, it's part of what the matriarch does. She is to counterweight, if you will, the events that the husband doesn't sort of attend in the home, and she bears the responsibility really of turning what could all easily become an ordinary family into what then will be known as an old money family. So she helps shape the family, if you will, and nurtures the people in it, and she helps create that shared vision with the husband of what a family needs to succeed and what a family needs to successfully hold on to and multiply and then pass on that fortune. So this is no light task that people undertake. Now, the real wealth in ultra-wealthy families, it isn't the money at all. The real wealth in the families is the family members themselves. Education is a very important part of their children's preparation and their children's life. And they believe, these wealthy families believe, that talent is important, and knowledge is important, and experience is important. They certainly don't like to leave things to chances. They certainly are not very high on the public school system, for example. In my research, I found out that the curriculum at the public schools promotes ideas that are often contrary to the values of successful families. Public schools, I read, they teach the government's narrative, not a family's narrative. And it's a family, it's the family narrative that makes up an important part of the family culture. That family creed comes from the narrative. Now, that doesn't mean you can't send your children to public schools, of course. It's just that if you do, you need a parent to oversee the child's progress. You also need to provide children with more than the public schools can even maybe offer. Even if they do find good jobs there, or there are great schools, whether they be public or private, if you want. Training is needed to succeed in life. Talent is needed to succeed in life. Knowledge is needed. Experience is needed. After all, if you need these things, because if you're passing along significant financial wealth without the means to manage it, well, it'll be more of a curse than a blessing, and your family, may not possess that money for very long. Wealth, even though it provides, freedom, security, and opportunity, money can help family members live richer, more fulfilling lives. But on the other side of the coin, putting money into the hands of unprepared family members, that can have an opposite effect. It can make them less free, and instead of finding themselves with a tool they know how to use, family money can be like a chainsaw in the hands of a drunk, and a danger to them, and the people around them. So family members, we have to be careful. They can become dysfunctional. They become demotivated. They can, do all these crazy things if they receive large amounts of cash that are, not earned, and they become combative sometimes, even litigious. So you don't want anything like that to happen to your children or your grandchildren, so it's important to embrace and foster and build that creed, that culture. Okay, item number 2, investment focus. Their investment focus is on loss avoidance. Loss avoidance is the number one focus of a wealthy family. If you have the money, the most important thing is not to lose the money. Next most important thing is to help the money perpetually appreciate and then spin off income, constant flows of income. So we're going to look at this, but before we do, let's the average investor does. Well, the average investor doesn't take any approach. They may try to follow what I call the traditional investment community's philosophical sort of approach, but they certainly make three critical mistakes. Average investors make three devastatingly critical mistakes. They are, number one, a 60% stock, 40% bond portfolio. I'm bringing this up now from Bob Rice's book, The Alternative Answer. Number two, a second most critical mistake they make is stock diversification. They think that equals safety. Oh, I've got all kinds of different stocks in my portfolio. I'm pretty diversified. That means my money's safe. And then finally, number three, the buy and hold philosophy, where if you just buy and hold, you'll always win in the long run. Let's take a look at these three, shall we? Mistake number one, 60% stock, 40% bond portfolio. At first glance, and I'm quoting from the book now, at first glance, the results of this standard allocation doesn't look too bad, doesn't look so horrible. A long-term average annual return of about 4%. So if you've got that portfolio, over the last 100 years, you should have averaged about a 4% annual return. But, it says in the book, this is a wonderful example of just how misleading statistics can be. The damning truth is such a portfolio suffered 6 collapses in the last century in which losses exceeded 20%. Other disasters that each took more than a decade to recover from in real terms. And there's no reason to expect that this pattern is going to change. Okay, well, let's just put those bad periods aside. Surely the rest of the time the returns have been great. Well, not so. 7 out of the 11 decades we've had since the year 1900 have produced an average annual return of less than 1%. 7 out of the 11, 1%. So stocks really, I don't know. So let's take a look at the bond side of this portfolio, shall we? The 60-40 portfolio model. Once again, from the book, the bond bubble that's been expanding for decades makes this safe component, remember the 60-40, the 40 is the safe component, part of the portfolio a potential hand grenade. And here's why. It says Treasury bond, in the last period in which the Treasury bond valuations were comparable to today's, was followed by 45 years of negative real returns. And no, it's not good enough. It's not enough to just hold on to your bonds to maturity so that your principal, you get your principal back. By definition, if that's all you got back, then you lost major purchasing power. And of course, that's precisely what this 40% bond allocation was supposed to protect. It was supposed to protect your purchasing power. Mistake number 2, stock diversification equals safety. Well, the standard method of diversification, that involves spreading stock selections across 9 buckets. Those buckets are identified by a matrix with small, medium, and large, as you can see down the left-hand side, up and down side, and the growth, blend, and value across the top. Okay, the general thought is if you fill all the buckets up, you're good to go. But as we all know, this last crash, it emptied all 9 buckets at once. So having something like a stock diversification for safety, you think it's great because when one thing's zigging and one thing's zagging and they're not quite in harmony, if you take a look at what happened in 2008, it's like the famous old Coke commercial. We all learned that the markets actually can sing in perfect harmony. So merely spreading dollars around, even among apparently many different assets or strategies within the equities market, does not necessarily provide the safety that we need. The crash was so devastating, in fact, for a variety of reasons, but it turns out that the Achilles heel here is that, you can't literally be safe and comfortable with just a diversified stock portfolio. In fact, Harvard is a prime example. They lost so much money after the 2008 crash that they're now the biggest timberland owner in New Zealand. Fully 10% of their portfolio, $3 billion of their $30 billion is invested in timber in foreign countries, and maybe that's a sign that buying trees in other countries may prove that investors going forward, you and I going forward, we might have to adapt a radically broader portfolio when we're aiming for safety. Safety being that loss avoidance strategy that the wealthy absolutely have to have. The mistake number 3 is buy and hold always win. Always wins. Well, let's take a look at that, shall we? We all know, especially if you're a parent trying to pay for tuition, how that's going to work out from that devastated college fund, or maybe if you're a homeowner and your home is still worth less than the mortgage that you have on it. We all know that a 50% loss requires a 100% gain. So if you're holding on and the market tanks, my gosh, getting at a 100% gain sometimes takes another decade or two. So that's not a strategy that the super wealthy use. In fact, instead, what they use is a portfolio mixture where they have what I call shock absorbers. These shock absorbers, they not only minimize the losses that portfolios experience in the downturns, but they can even profit in those same periods and increase the value. So when the market's going down, not only does it lower the overall volatility of the entire portfolio, it adds profit to the portfolio in those turmoil, gut-wrenching, volatile sort of times. So having some kind of portfolio shock absorber is very, very smart. Okay, according to Bob Rice, the author of The Alternative Answer, portfolios basically have 4 main jobs. Now, I'm not so sure this may be agreed on by the general financial planning world, but certainly after my studies, I believe very wholeheartedly in this approach. Here are the 4 main jobs that a portfolio, especially for the wealthy that want to pass it on, the 4 main jobs that a portfolio should do. Produce higher inflation-protected income, meaning that there's enough income being generated for you to be able to afford the things when you need the things. If you don't need them now, but you need them 5 years from now, and the price of them then, inflation adjusted, is 15% higher than today, you need something that produces the inflation protection. Number 2, you need a strong base for risk reduction. Risk reduction, or how about risk avoidance? Number 3, focus on long-term growth enhancement, not short-term profit speculation. Very important to take in that for a second. Long-term growth enhancement. If you're only thinking about yourself and your own retirement, maybe that's not a long enough term to be thinking, because if you think about the next generation or the generation thereafter, guess who will be okay? You. Because you've invested with a long enough term growth enhancement philosophy that what you own and you hold is going to flourish with some very low-risk asset classes that you selected, and by the very nature of that placement and that allocation, because the focus was 100 years from now, you're going to be fine 25 years from now. It's just, listen, it's just a different way of thinking. Number fourth job is to protect the purchasing power. So purchase power protection. Notice no one talked about having liquidity. This is the number one question I get asked by the average investor. Well, how liquid is it? If I wanted to sell tomorrow, how quickly can I get out? They're fixated on liquidity. The average investor is fixated on liquidity. And they probably should be if they've got a 60-40 allocation. I mean, the markets are up and down like a yo-yo, 10% loss over the last 30 days. 100% gain in 4 years after the crash. I mean, where do you go? I mean, you think, boy, I have to have it right there to be able to get out and protect myself. Of course, then you're playing with this profit speculation. From a profit speculation standpoint. A lot of wealthy people invest in hedge funds. They love real assets. They like private equity funds. But here's how they categorize the liquidity. Hedge funds, usually you have to hold it in there for at least 1 year, 1 year hold. So that they call that semi-liquid. Real assets like real estate, like agriculture, like timber, that can't be sold instantly, but can usually be sold, over a 1 or a 2 year period. If you bought a house and it took a little while to sell it, it's not like it's totally, anti-liquid. It's a little illiquid, but you can eventually sell it, ultimately sell it. Same with a piece of real estate, a farmland or timberland. It's not totally illiquid. It's not 100% anti-liquid, but they like those illiquid investments, and I'll tell you the reason why in a second. And then there's private equity funds. These are long-term lockups, normally 10 or 15-year holds or more. And even sometimes, even sometimes they require ongoing funding. So you've got semi-liquid, illiquid, and anti-liquid. Here's just a quick look at some of the suggestions in the Alternative Answer book, where higher returns and more alternative asset allocation opportunities lie. Private placements, master limited partnership, black swan funds, cat bonds, peer-to-peer lending, and of course the favorite is the real tangible asset. And that real tangible asset, the one that they super wealthy focus on, and I'm talking, the billionaires and above, they love this generational wealth and income that is found most safely right there in the dirt. Right there in the dirt. And their most popular and most, beloved asset class is certainly timber. You have 4 billionaires on the screen. Ted Turner is probably the one that you recognize most. And yes, you can grow money, and money does grow on trees if you are in the timber business. But Ted Turner didn't make his billions in timber. He made it in the media world. But he invests heavily. He's, I think, the second largest timber owner in the country now, over 2 million acres of timberland. The gentleman to his right, to your left on the screen, Brad Kelly, made his billions in tobacco. As soon as he sold his tobacco business, he put fully $1/3, $1 billion into timberland. Why? It's safe. It's generational. And there's something else about timber that the super wealthy absolutely embrace. I'll tell you what that is in a second. Billionaire money manager Jeremy Grantham says timber is the only low-risk, high-return asset. In fact, he says it's the best long-term asset, period. And here it is. This is the key to tonight's message. What you get when you own timber, you can't get in too many places, certainly not in the traditional investment vehicles. Biological appreciation. Biologically, almost 60% of the return that you get was because of Mother Nature, the biological growth, not because of the price going up, because of the market being in the healthy shape, because of biology, because of growth. And that protects your purchasing power better than anything else I know. And of course, if you look at the track record from 1987 to 2004, as I picked for tonight, after looking at the National Council of Real Estate Investment Fiduciaries Timberland Index, they only started tracking the returns on timberland in the early 80s. You can see that a 14% annualized return since the mid-80s is a very, very healthy return. What does money look like if it grows on an annual average basis of 14%? Now, of course, if you want liquidity, you're not going to get that. I'm going to tell you in a second just a nugget for tonight. Here's one nugget, biological appreciation, but there's another one coming. Okay, so listen, timber owners, they love their timber. Now, they're not loving it because, they're, I was going to say socially and all the other sort of classifications crazy. They got big smiles on their faces because they love the way timber just plods along. It's portfolio insurance, plus it's a wealth creator, plus it's a wealth preserver. It's an unbelievable generational financial security asset. It's low risk and it has unbelievably above average returns. Oh, it's a sweetheart of an asset class, and it just sometimes people don't learn about it until they're in their 60s or 70s or even 80s. When you learn about it, it's one of those asset classes, in my opinion, that you should hold. Here's how the biological process works. You plant a sapling, a little baby sapling. And after a period of time, the tree is ready for harvest. And when you harvest it and turn it into lumber, the commodity that's sold, you are really taking small amounts of dollars and turning them into large amounts of dollars because of the biological growth. Let me show you what that looks like if you work with a company like ours. Now keep in mind, biology isn't negatively affected by markets. Biology doesn't care if the stock market's up or down, or if oil is high or low, or gold is zigging and zagging. But in our program, $100,000 purchases 5 deeded acres. Fee simple ownership. You own the dirt. You own the underlying tangible real asset. And the $100,000 covers the land and the trees and the crop care, all inclusive. It works out to approximately $50 a tree because there's 1,880 hardwood trees, tropical hardwood trees, planted on that property for you. $50 a tree. Today, when those trees are mature and they're harvested and rough sawn lumber is created and sold, approximately $500, just a little under $500 is the saleable amount of lumber. That's what you call growing money. And here's the next nugget. There are not very many assets that you can own that perform as well as timberland because of the illiquidity premium. And this is what perpetual wealth, generational wealth families embrace. They love earning this illiquidity premium. What is an illiquidity premium? It's the extra return an investor receives as compensation for holding less than fully liquid assets or securities. Meaning it's the extra return on investment, the extra profit that most investors miss. They miss it completely because they're fixated on liquidity. Remember, if you hold assets that are a little less liquid, you'll earn the illiquidity premium. Now, of course, a lot of families today and a lot of investors have all got caught up in this last 10, 15 years, from the precious metals world, from those that say it's going to $10,000 an ounce all the way to those that think it's going back to $600 an ounce, that precious metals is a great portfolio insurance. Really? Really? Well, this is how I look at it. An insurance policy, buying insurance is something that you buy because you want to protect something that could go haywire. Why would you be buying something that's going to protect the haywire that also has the opportunity or the chance of decreasing in value? Let's take a $1 million portfolio, for example, and let's say you bought into the mantra that you must have at least 10% of that portfolio in something as an insurance policy, and precious metals is the ideal portfolio insurance. So you got 10% of your $1 million in precious metals. And if that gold doesn't do what you want it to do, and it goes down, how's that insurance? That's more volatility. I don't really think it's insurance. I think it's something else. When I'm buying insurance, I want that insurance to pay off if the other thing doesn't. With gold, there's a 50% chance it could. There's a 50% chance that it's not going to. Yeah, there are pluses and minuses, and we'll cover them. You have no biological growth with gold or silver. That 1 ounce of silver, that 1 ounce of gold cannot become a gold bar, cannot become a silver bar, can't become 2 ounces. As I said, the value rises and falls. So that's why I put it as it's more of a bet than it is an insurance precaution. You're betting. And guess what? The super wealthy, the generational family focuser hates to bet. They like to know. Insurance is a bet, in my opinion. And of course, you lose the illiquidity premium because gold's very liquid. It's easy to sell it. Now, one thing it does do, it protects the buying power, because if you think back 100 years ago, 1 ounce of gold could buy a nice 3-piece suit. Today, 1 ounce of gold can buy a nice 3-piece suit. So it does protect buying power. But for me, I think it's, I've looked at it. I've looked at all the charts. I think it's a lousy place for an investment. Might be a good place if you want to place a bet, and certainly a good place if you want something liquid, and certainly a good place for protecting buying power. I want to touch on coconuts for a second because, listen, we're talking about hard assets, we're talking about perpetual income, we're talking about tangible things in the ground, not paper assets. We entered the coconut world here recently after a long study, and coconuts start producing in year 3 and 4, the dwarf varieties, and then they produce for 60 years of production. That's called perpetual income. It's what the wealthy focus on. If you're new to our message and you're joining us tonight for the very first time and learning about our company, go to PreciousTimber.com and check out how we grow money. Check out how we create income with coconuts. It's an interesting program that we have. We call it a pure play, where you own the dirt and own the commodity, just like you would own a piece of real estate if you're a real estate investor, and then we manage it on your behalf, just like you would have a property manager. Most of the time, our private owners come and visit us first. They do their due diligence. They check out our corporation. They talk to some of our pre-existing private owners, and then they come down and they walk the plantations. We have many, lots of acres planted, and many hundreds of dedicated workers taking care of our product and our livelihood for us. It's a great trip. I invite you to come down. September is the month where we've been working now for 8 months. We're in our 9th month of the year, and this is our final month to take on 2015 reservations. So any planting that's being done this year, and anyone that's interested in holding this asset class, has through this month to talk to us, to learn about us, to discover us, and to reserve one of our allocated plots for private ownership. 25% of what we plant goes to private owners. The rest is corporately held. If you're thinking about your IRA, if you're between 45 and 60, I wanted to put this slide in. because I know how important it is to, not only focus on your own retirement, but focus on your family and generational. But as we get older, those medical expenses, we've gone to, we've seen what happened to our medical insurance plans here recently. My 90-year-old father in England 3-4 years ago, before he passed, wasn't able to get the services that he needed, and it was very expensive. It's a system over there that's a single-payer system, National Health. We're going to need money when we're in our 80s and 90s, and here's a great sort of endorsement, if you will. If you're looking for something to supercharge your IRA, give me a call, email me personally, alexwilson@PreciousTimber.com. Let me show you how to safely turn a $250,000 IRA into $2 million or more, excuse me, over the next 15 years. So, by the time you're 60, by the time you're 75, depending on your age today, you could have a nice nest egg to call upon for medical expenses or elderly care expenses. We're going now over to the third part of this creed, the third part of this culture, and that's hard and soft structures. Let's talk about those. What are they? Well, the hard structures are the expensive ones. They're the wills, the trusts, the tax planning, the very necessary things that help your family money survive for generations. Without them, really, the fortune is not likely to last. I'm reading now from Bill Bonner and Will Bonner's Family Fortunes book. They call them hard structures because they're expensive to put in place. They're hard like concrete. They're like tempered steel. Once they're in place, they're difficult to change. They're costly to put together. You need lawyers, accountants, tax experts need to help you set them up. Hard structures are, like I said, tax and estate planning, trusts, things that make having money really a burden. It takes time and hard work to get them in place and to understand them. But that's very important. It's very important because many people find setting up these structures so costly and so annoying that they decide not to bother. They just don't bother at all. And successful estate planning and successful tax avoidance, legal tax avoidance, that comes at a price. First, you have to be able to do the work, and then pay someone else to do it isn't enough. You have to make sure it's done the right way, and you have to understand it well enough so that you can stick to the plan, and finally you have to follow through. And often doing things that make you nervous, make you tired, make you stressful a little bit, but over a period of many, many years, it's a constant focus on these hard structures. And there are 4 key hard structures: the will and the estate plan, a trust, a tax strategy, and then your investment and bank accounts. So setting these up again, it's difficult. It's costly. You've got to really study them. But here's the thing. A family fortune can stand 1 weak generation, but it cannot stand 2. 2 weak generations, we've seen it 90% of the time it kills it. So having these hard structures in place together with soft structures. And what are soft structures? They're a set of protocols. They're a set of conventions or formalities that the family sets up together. Now, there has to be leadership. And then they follow those things in order for the money to flourish and grow generation after generation. And the purpose for the family having these soft structures is so that these structures act as instructions. They act as rules. They act as a foundation. And they focus on ensuring that the family understands that this family money is not something to be used. It's something that you have access to, that you then can help grow, perpetually increase, so that it's there for the next generation. So it's something that you help building. In other words, if you're born into a family with 100 million, your goal is to grow it to 1 billion. And the next generation is to grow it to a few billion. So it stays there for the benefit of the family. And just like companies, these soft structures, like governments and organizations, they have leadership roles and they have governance roles. And some people have to play the leadership roles and some people have to play the governance roles. The work is hard, it's exhausting, but it's vitally necessary if the family money is going to remain. And if it's not done correctly, here's what happens. When the family fortunes are lost, generally when family fortunes are lost, it's usually because the family falls apart first. Not the money disappears first. The family falls apart first because of lack of organization, lack of leadership, lack of protocols, lack of systems in place. And that's how the money is lost. And as we wrap things up for this evening, and I thank you very, very much for your time, there are plenty of examples on Google. Just Google wealthy families, generational wealth. You're going to find all kinds of interesting stories in Bill and Will's book. And I also found it online, the Kongo family from Japan, founded in 587 AD. They're Korean temple builders, a wonderful process where they don't use hammers and nails. They're all connected, and they're based in Japan. The family business lasted 1,430 years. In other words, this family business has been around longer than most modern-day countries. And each generation passed down the traditions and the systems and the processes. They passed down the succession processes, the leadership processes. Each son and son-in-law, for example, had to work a 10-year carpentry apprenticeship. I mean, you want people with experience, you want people with talent, you want people with knowledge. Kids, the boys had to do this. They had to learn. And so that's the oldest example of a successful, generational, wealthy family passing down the wealth. And so now it's all up to us. It's up to you what you do with your family. It's up to me what I do with my family. Most families, as I said earlier, they don't do this. Most families live for today. The money's gone. Certainly by you leave something to your kids, and certainly by the end of their lifetime, most of the money's gone. And so what sort of a family do you have? Ask yourself a few questions. What sort of a family do I have? What kind of a family do I want? What are you trying to achieve? Where should I start? Will my family participate? Who will, who won't? Do I have enough insurance allocations in my portfolio? Where are my allocations? What do I have? What assets am I holding? Do I have things that can not only protect my portfolio from gut-wrenching volatility, but also help it increase in value when times get tumultuous? Am I willing to step outside of this box that I've been put into by the broader financial arena, this 60-40 philosophy? Am I willing to accept that there are different parts of the world, where I should be holding assets? What do I think about the future of my own country? Do I like this debt? Do I like this philosophy of no interest, free money, printing? There's a lot of questions for us to ask, but here's one that I ask you to embrace. Think long-term. Think generational. Certainly, we know that we have a little insurance for ourselves. If we think generational and we set our portfolio up for generational wealth, we should be sailing in our own lifetime, make the extra return by holding less than fully liquid assets. In other words, earn that illiquidity premium. It's a large premium that most investors miss. And when you're missing that for 30 or 40 years of an investment lifetime, that's considerable wealth that could have accumulated. Steve Sugarud of True Wealth, part of the Stansbury and Associates group, part of Agora Publishing, wrote a great piece called The Ultimate Agricultural Investment. I have it as a white paper. I made a quick change because Steve showed a $10,000 investment. I multiplied it by 10 and with the same numbers, but just multiplied the amount that was put in. Instead of 10,000 investors in 1971, I put 100,000. But I want you to take a look at something that's kind of fascinating, because first of all, $100,000 in timber became $15 million in 2010 after being placed in there for what? That's 40 years. There was only 1 year where it had a I was going to say devastating. It's not even devastating. The worst year in 2001, where timber values and the returns on timber for that year were negative. There were 5 negative years, but there's only one that was really stood out to me, and that was 2001, where it went down portfolio went down 5.2%. We just lost 10% in the stock market the last 2 weeks. It's nice when you can go 40 years, and the worst year your holding ever saw on a negative was minus 5.2%. So if you'd like that white paper, email me. I'll send that to you. And if you'd like some education, I've mentioned and I've referred to Family Fortunes by Bill and Will Bonner. I've mentioned and I've used and referred and read from tonight The Alternative Answer by Bob Rice. Another book I've read that I found fascinating was the Family Office book by Richard C. Wilson, no relation to myself. But also I'd recommend what my partner and I did, and that we joined Bonner and Partners Family Office. You can find that online, Bonner and Partners Family Office. The education that we've had at the events that they have produced has been nothing short of fantastic. I mean, really, really good. I appreciate your time greatly. Thank you so much for spending the evening, an hour with me or so this evening. And if you'd like any information, if you'd like to talk to us, if you'd like to communicate with us, you can find us online at PreciousTimber.com, or you can email us at info@PreciousTimber.com. Or you can email me personally at awilson@PreciousTimber.com. Or you can call us at 855-888-6288. Once again, thank you so much for your time. I hope this information was helpful, and I wish you the very best for your family, for your wealth, and for the future. Thank you.